Alright, everybody. Hi, this is Eric again. I've got Nick, aka the gaming theologian, here, and we're going to be talking about a topic that is quite fascinating. I'm not sure what we're going to hear about, but again, given that Nick has talked very well of the resurrection, I wanted to hear his thoughts on this. And Nick, this is what you're doing your PhD dissertation on, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes. So the topic is video games and Christianity. So I guess I'll just start off by asking uh, what exactly inspired you to do this topic. And what is the message, I guess, that you're trying to get across, like the thesis?
Well, first off, I've only just started my PhD, so my dissertation would be off in the future still.
I
But
see.
I've been doing the reading on it for a while because uh, I was in Dr. Adam Harwood's systematic theology class, and I'd thought about my PhD, what I do it on, because I was originally thinking, resurrection, things like that. But so many people have covered that. There's not, I mean, I wanted to do something that would be unique, something be different to me. And then Dr. Harwood, who by the way has a great systematic theology that is accessible for anyone, so I recommend you get it,
Okay.
is speaking about dissertations and unusual topics were written on. He says, and you got Matthew Millsap who wrote a dissertation on video games and Christianity. Well, my ears perk up immediately with that because I'm 44 and I've been a gamer ever since the ColecoVision. And odds are you've never even heard of that.
Yeah, I can't.
And so I have my laptop right there and I find Matthew Millsap on Facebook pretty much instantly and say, hey, can I get your dissertation? Sure. He sends it to me and it took me about a week or so, read through the whole thing, and I said, okay, this is where I'm going. So I needed something more than just that. So I thought I'd cover video games and stories. And the idea that we play games in large part also because we have a built in God given need for story, quest, and purpose.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. Well, that's definitely that's definitely a good and very interesting premise too. And I guess, and also just as an aside, what kind of games do you play now, or what other games have been your favorites in that way?
Generally, I play RPGs a lot. They're my favorites. Although I did just go through Hollow Knight quite a bit, and I've loved the Final Fantasy games. Naturally, I've loved the Zelda games, and I recently discovered the Persona games, which I think are simply amazing. And just before we were talking, I've started playing Skyrim for the first time.
Okay.
So I'm going through that right now as well. And of course, I like a lot of the classical games, your Mario, your Mega Man, your Metroids, your Castlevanias. I love the classic games, but RPGs are my favorites.
Okay. Well, that's definitely good. Yeah. Mostly the most recent video games I played were Dragon Ball related, actually, and everything
Mhm.
else. So, but that was a while ago. Oh, and I haven't played some of the newer games, but yeah, no, I also like a lot of the classic Mario games, of course, and uh, my brother and I played them plenty of times. But yeah, no, I got video games a lot later than a lot of kids did in my school. But yeah, no, but it's it's definitely there's a lot out there, obviously. So, but you've specifically you said Skyrim was the thing you recently played, or you were playing for the first time before we were there.
Oh, I've just recently started it.
Okay, okay, and so I guess what exactly? Because I know you said that essentially your premise is we have a God-given sort of want for like storytelling and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess how exactly does a I'm trying to think of how to word this, but how exactly does like a Christian gamer like is it too much different from like a normal gamer, or is it like I guess is that how we should look at video games, or I guess what is the exact I guess how exactly is this like can this have other implications for our lives, I guess. So sorry if that question's a bit broad.
Stories have been with us for so long. For instance, writing, one of the first oldest writings we have, not the oldest, but one of them, is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a story. Scripture, wherever a lot of it is stories. I mean, we can debate with atheists if those stories are true or false, but there's stories. And when we have the Gospels are stories. Now, we as Christians think they're true stories, but they're stories. The Greeks, they did plays, stories. We started writing novels, and by the way, when a lot of these when novels were first written, it was thought that they would destroy the morals of people. So this whole idea is nothing new. When we made films, one of the things we started doing with films immediately, stories. And then when we make games, it's not too long before, hey, stories. And we make them that way. The difference with games, though, is video games are the first real medium of stories that are thoroughly interactive. Now, I know we had things like the choose your own adventure books when I was a kid that you could go through,
Right.
but nowhere near the level we have in video games. The analogy I give to people is if you go and you watch the GoldenEye movie, you are watching James Bond. If you read the novel, you are reading about James Bond. But if you play the game GoldenEye, you are James Bond. And we can watch a movie and we can see the main character do something we think is thoroughly stupid, and we're pretty much screaming at the screen, "Why are you doing this?" But in a game, if we are playing as a character, we have no one to blame but ourselves, barring a cutscene, of course. If we do
Right.
something stupid in the game, we did it. No
Yeah.
one else did, which is why also games becoming a great way for testing ethical scenarios and teaching us how to make proper moral decisions. I mean, this is why America's military system uses America's army to train, and it's more than just see how many people you can shoot in such a time. The game's
Right.
also about following orders, staying in line,
Hmm.
managing resources, things of that sort. All things you need in the military. It's not just how many people can you kill, it's can you follow orders, can you do a task, things of that sort.
Yeah. Wow. That's really good, and reminded me of one time when I was on my friend's team, and I forget what game it was, but I essentially it was a fighting game, and I used one of my attacks, and I accidentally killed my friend's player. And I was like, so yeah, that's
Mm,
definitely a stupid thing I did in video games, so I can't blame
yeah.
anybody else for that. But um,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that was but that's definitely true in that video games are interactive, and certainly I would also agree that in a way we want to create stories, not just tell them and hear about them. I mean, we want to do those
Yeah.
things, but I think video games, in some cases, I mean, it does allow you to play to just make different decisions and choose different things and
Mm-hmm.
choose a different path. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in older games it's more limited. Like you can usually change one scenario, but I found the more modern games try to go into like more what if scenarios even more. So I think that
Yep.
definitely plays to our sort of creative nature, I would say.
There's something we need to say about Christians making stories because, yes, we do need to make stories. The problem is we're usually awful at it.
Oh yeah,
Because who goes to see Christian movies in a theater? It's Christians. Who's listening to Christian music? It's Christians. Who's watching Christian TV shows? It's Christians. Now, who's watching secular movies? Christians and everyone else. Who's listening to secular music? Christians and everyone else. Who's watching secular TV shows? Christians and everyone else. Why? Simple. Because they're good.
yeah,
Okay, whatever you might think, we like those stories.
yeah,
And when Christians tell stories, our assumption is always, sadly, hey, the audience is stupid. We better explicitly spell out the gospel for them or else they will miss it.
yeah,
And it does not work. I
yeah.
talked with the pastor once of a church, Level Up Church. They're for reaching nerds, gamers, people like that. And the pastor was telling me about how they released a mod for the World of Warcraft game that anyone could get. And I'm bracing myself and I say, did you put anything explicitly Christian in it? And he said, no, sir. We just made a mod for the game and said, level up church. And I just breathed a huge sigh of relief. Thank
Okay,
goodness, because when we make it, we think it has to be explicitly Christian, and it doesn't. Look
yeah,
at Lord of the Rings, best-selling novel, movie, everything. It is very Christian, but at the same time, it is not explicitly
right,
Christian. Same thing with Chronicles of Narnia. Narnia is much more in your face bit, but it does not spell out everything explicitly. It leaves it for you to draw the connections together. That is the way stories need to be told. We need to write stories that will appeal to the audience. Because who cares if you make a Christian movie, video game, book, or TV show, whatever, and your only audience is Christians? You're
yeah,
not reaching the lost that way. Now, I'm not saying that there is obviously a market for Christians writing for Christians, such as
right,
Christian Bible studies, self-help, things like that. If we want to use evangelism in the world of stories, we have to make stories that will appeal to non-Christians. And there's an interesting YouTube channel of a Celtic Cajun. He keeps saying this as his rule: make it fun first. If you make it fun first, people do it. I was watching a YouTube video about Christian video games, and it's such a simple comment, but someone said it, and it's just always like when he said, "I'd play a Christian video game if it was fun." That's all they're asking. Make it fun. And I mean, really, think
yeah.
about it. Eric, would you like to play a game if it was not fun?
No, I wouldn't.
Even if it was a Christian game?
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot of Christian
same
movies
here.
out there. But sorry, go
Yep.
ahead. Go ahead.
You do not get a free pass because you don't get a free pass on quality because you have the word Christian in it.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. And again, it violate. I would say many Christian movies violate the first rule of storytelling in many cases, which is show, don't tell. In that way, so
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but yeah, and it's great because Chronicles of Narnia. I mean, those are some of the stories again that even non-Christians can like. Same with Lord of the Rings.
yeah.
But but yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like, and I've used this in the past to say that, like, look, I get it. Like, I like the message in some cases, but I would never show it to like my non-Christian friends because they would hate it. It's kind of like, in
Yeah,
political movies where, if they're so beating you over the head with their message, it's like, geez, we get it. Okay, you
yeah,
like this thing, and
yeah,
and that's how a lot of non-Christians would feel about like a story like that, even if the story might even
yeah.
have. But go ahead. Yeah.
Let's make a parallel that since you mentioned political. What do a lot of us who are more conservative hate to see in movies, TV shows, and video games? Woke. Because it is too often in your face, and you feel like it's just cramming it down as it's forcing its agenda on us. When I do the parallel, we do the exact same thing with Christian media. We're just on the other side.
Yeah, that's true. And but yeah, no, a there's honestly a market, and I would just say that because a lot of Christians are just, it's almost like they think any style other than directness is like compromising, and that's just not even
Yeah,
true. Because and it's just
yeah,
so annoying in many cases where it's like, first of all, the Bible has different genres so it's not like God
yep.
has one way of communicating. So to me, it's like
Mm-hmm.
he likes to tell. He's capable of telling stories in a different way, and sure, you can have
Mm-hmm.
directness, and that's definitely beneficial at times, but if that's the only tool in your toolbox,
Mm-hmm.
then you're gonna run into trouble fast, I would say.
Yeah, we often think the message has to come first. No, the medium comes first. And then how you tell the message in that medium. Make it something the people will want first, because it doesn't matter how good the message is if they do not want it.
Mm, definitely, definitely. So I guess so I know you said that your thesis is a little ways away, but I guess, would there be any other specific messages that Christians definitely should get, other than like just not beating people over the head with video games, or basically their messaging?
Well, yeah, there are several things we can get. First off, let's consider that games can be a positive guide to behavior. We often think that if our children go off and play Grand Theft Auto, they're going to start running down people in the streets and things like that. Where if you're going to accept that people can be changed for bad ways by video games, you should just as much accept they'll be changed by good ways.
Mm,
So, I played through Persona 5 Warrior recently. And one of the interesting things about this is it's not just an RPG with battles, it's also with relationships. And you have to talk with people to become confidants. And when you build up your relationship with them, you get special benefits for it. And your relationship grows deeper. And when you talk to these people, you're given usually 2 or 3 choices, normally 3. And so I'm looking at this, and then sometime going through the game, I stop and realize, oh my gosh, this is something I have been wanting for some time. Because, like I said last time I was on, I'm on the autism spectrum. I really wish I could hit a pause button in real life and think about what I'm going to say in a scenario and say it. But when I'm playing Persona and I see the options and you get like a sound notification when you say the right thing, I realize I'm learning something. For instance, if I talk to a female character, I'd think, wait, women usually like to have their problems heard first before they're addressed. And I'd give a reply along lines to indicate that I hear what the character is saying and it's appreciated. And that is such a unique growth tool because now, having done that, now I can go and step outside in the real world and say, okay, this is an interesting way I can view my offline relationships. And I view these as a game of sorts, a challenge to say the right thing, to build up a relationship in a proper way. That is extremely helpful for me.
But yeah, no, that's incredible actually, because it, and
Yeah.
it is true that if I'm sure everybody back in the day talked about all video games corrupt people. It's like, but it can totally work the other way, and it sort of goes back to
Mm.
the passage like to the pure all things are pure, but to but to
Yep.
the unrighteous nothing is pure. So it really has to do a lot more with who's doing it and why, rather
Yep.
than necessarily video games are just bad because they do something. But yeah,
Yeah. I find I've also got a natural knack for being cautious with how I spend my money and saving my money properly. I think, why is that? And then I'm going, wait, I've played RPGs, and that's what you have to do with money. You have to work, you
mm,
have to build up, you have to save money, and you try to use your money to the best so that you can always have enough. Also consider this: gamers know about failure. We face failure every day. We will fail at a task in a game several times, and yet we come back and keep going because we refuse to give up. Like I'm
mm,
playing Hollow Knight and I'm fighting this enemy not too long ago called the Enraged Guardian. And let's just say he wasn't the only one enraged towards the end. I was getting pretty enraged as well. But I kept saying, I want to keep trying because we know the developer made it that there is a way to beat that enemy.
right,
And eventually, yes, I beat that enemy. And it was such a joy to do so. Now, there were times when I was going through the game, I thought, okay, this enemy's very tough. I need to come back later, get some new items, get some new skills, things like that, and beat them later. And that's what I did. But we face these challenges head on because we learn to accept failure and yet keep going.
yeah, definitely. And of course, it can encourage you to be creative in how you get around it, obviously, because sometimes
Yep.
enemies need
Yep.
to be beaten with smarts rather than just brute force or other things of that nature.
Yep. Eric, do you also like your life to be easier, or do you like it to be harder?
Well, honestly, I mean, I won't lie, easier in many cases, but in some cases it might be boring if it was too easy in that case.
Yeah. You know who wants to make things harder?
Who is it?
Gamers.
Mm,
Why do we have special challenges like speed runs? How can I do this the fastest? Or a Final Fantasy level 1 challenge? Or one of the most unbelievable ones I've seen was someone went through, some people have gone through the original Ninja Gaiden on the original Nintendo, and done what's called a pacifist challenge, where the only enemies you fight directly are the bosses. Everywhere
oh,
else throughout the whole game, the rule is you do not kill a single enemy. And these people do this. They make artificial challenges on games that are already. Ninja Gaiden, this game that's already been declared Nintendo hard, and rightly so. And yet these people go through and say, "I think I've found a way to make it harder. Let's see if we can do this." And they do it because people like challenges, and that's something gamers go for. And if they think they're not getting enough challenge, they will make a new challenge for themselves.
mm, that's a great point. That's in fact, and because again, if the game is too easy, it'll just be boring, or they'll throw it away after a bit, or they might even
Yep.
give it back on the 30-day return policy if the store has one. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I think it's great because it can teach us many things about life in general. Because while we may, in
Yeah.
fact, while we definitely don't like necessarily having like whatever it is we're going through at the time, in retrospect, in many cases, you can say, yeah, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much, or I wouldn't have appreciated it as much if it were too easy in that way, or at least it served a purpose.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's in fact, if you skip too many levels in gaming, and this is another thing, oftentimes you won't have the equipment that you need, which can be very analogous for,
Yep.
why you have to go through something first before you have something else in life, or reach a certain
Mm.
level or plateau or whatever terminology you want to use. So those are definitely things that video
Yeah.
games instill in you.
Yeah. I'm taking a seminar next semester in the fall on theistic proofs, arguments, and I've already spoken with a professor and said, here is the one I'd like to use. And this is one that says, if video games appeal to us, I think there's a strong case that atheism is false. And to start,
Hmm.
I go back even to the original Super Mario Brothers. Okay? Now, I I remember getting my first Nintendo. I was 8 years old, and Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt came with the Nintendo. And so you pick up the game and you read the instruction manual. And gosh, I miss instruction manuals. They were so much fun to just read through. And you read a brief little story, and it's living in peace. And then Bowser shows up, who we know pretty much as King Koopa a lot of times, and he captures the princess, imprisons her, and turns all the people of the Mushroom Kingdom to bricks. And Mario hears about this and shows up and decides to rescue the princess so she can free all her people and defeat Bowser. And we think, okay, this is a good story, alright? It's basic, but we know what's going on. But unbeknownst to us as little children at the time, we had something else smuggled in there that we missed, which is essential to a story. Morality. We didn't need to be told in the instruction booklet. By the way, Bowser is evil. By the way, the princess is good. We knew who the bad guys were. We knew who the good guys were. We knew we were the good guy, and we knew what we had to do. We knew there was a goal. We knew there was a purpose. That assumes objective goodness, which forms the basis for objective morality. There is a difference. That assumes purpose. That assumes teleology. That is theism right there somewhere assumed. Not Christian theism directly. There could be it could be Judaism or Islam, but there is a built-in implicit idea of objective good, evil, and objective purpose right there. Now, someone might say, well, what about something like a puzzle game, like Tetris or something? Okay, if you play Tetris and you just hold the down button and let all the blocks fall straight down, you are going to lose. You have to play Tetris according to the rules set by the designer of the game. Is that teleology? Yes. Yes, it is. That's also the case with any sport out there. You have to play according to the rules of the game. Teleology, right there. It's been right under our noses the whole time, and we never noticed it.
Wow. That is quite eye-opening, I guess, and very good. And also, just to drive
Yeah,
home the point, notice we don't need to be beaten over the head with who's good and who's bad Christian films. Like we
right.
can you imagine
Yeah,
if if in the game there was a cutscene that said, "Hey guys, just so you know, Bowser's a bad dude," and like that would just probably
yeah,
have killed. Like,
yeah. That would I would just be left staring at the screen and thinking, "Well, you think I'm an idiot or something?" Of course he is. We know he is.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, and it's really great because, and you're right that it does serve as a proof for classical theism in that way. And
Mhm.
again, so many, and because I know I'm going to get comments about this because I know somebody's going to say this, and I just have to. Yeah, we know it doesn't prove Christian theism. Point is, it's a process of
Right,
elimination. So if we have objective truth
right.
or objective goodness and
Mhm.
objective morals, atheism's out. Like so,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
it doesn't prove Christian theism, but it is like uh, check. It's basically checkmate for atheists because again, objective morality. Uh, Again, is mostly a religious concept and a theistic concept since but and we could get into that later but anyway I know I'm going to get
yeah.
comments about it anyway but
Yeah. I'd also like to say something else on this because I'm sure there's going to be some parents out listening to this. And here's something I'd like to say to parents whose children are gamers. If your children were athletes, you would try to be at every game they played in and support them. If they play the piano, you would try to go to every recital they did. Parents, if your kids are gamers, play games with them. Have fun with them. But this gives you advantages. It gives you the ability to bond with your kids, to understand what they're doing, and afterwards you can have discussions about the game, discuss ethical questions, discuss worldview questions. And by the way, the more you do this, your kids are also going to be less likely to pick up a game that you would disapprove of because they know, hey, if I turn this on and mom doesn't like it, she's gonna have a few words with me. Gaming can be a family event. So parents, if your kids are gamers, play with them.
hmm, that's really great advice and honestly um because so too often games are kind of thought of like, oh, well, that's a waste of time, or it's just sort of like
Right.
guilty pleasures in many cases, but it's not. And like you said, there's plenty of values in there, um, and it can teach life lessons and even develop.
I find it so strange. Yeah, I find it so strange that people say if I play a video game where I'm actively using my mind and having to think outside the box and learn skills, that's a waste of time. But if I sit there and passively watch sports, I'm putting my time to good use. I'm not
Yeah,
saying anything against people watching sports, but there's just seems to be a problem there.
no, definitely, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with it. But I mean, really, it doesn't take much skill. I mean, even if you do have a good strategy, it's not like you can. It's not like you're going to be able to call up like the Steelers or something and say, "Hey guys, I got a good strategy." They're not going to. You can't get in touch with them, and it's not going to make a difference on the game. Uh,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
but but yeah, no, and
In
I
churches, also, if if churches want to do something evangelistic, here's something: have a game night.
mm,
Believe it or not, there's a book I read. I think it's called "Play Games More," with a gaming parent with gaming kids, and he said they were putting together a game night at their church. Non-Christians started helping them put it together and get the word out about this. Non-Christians help with an evangelistic event. Are you listening to this, pastors and youth ministers? Have a game night. And I'll tell you something games do. Games build fellowship so much when people play together.
yeah,
We, I had to do evangelism in when I was doing my master's for my scholarship, and I'm not really good at face-to-face evangelism. I'm far better behind a computer screen. But we go to parts of town where people lived in poverty and everything, and then we're getting ready to leave one day, and I see some kids, just young kids, probably not even 10 years old. They get out of football and they start tossing it around. And some of our students who are out for doing evangelism suddenly join in, and everyone's playing this friendly game in the street here of football. And I talk to the professor we go out with, and I say, "This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Look, these kids are out here playing. Everyone, they don't care about age, they don't care about race, they don't care about religion right now. They are building fellowship over a game because everyone has the same goals. Everyone knows the rules. Everyone knows the boundaries. And look at the connections going on right there. Games build connections. So many of my friendships I have right now came because people said, "Oh, so you're a gamer too. What games do you play?" And we connect that way. You can reach your non-Christian friends very well this way.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and honestly, it's such a great market too, and I feel like
Yeah,
also um, because games really do have imagination on display so often,
yeah,
and really you're only limited by your own imagination in the way you can tell stories in
mhm,
so many different ways, and it provides a lot of avenues to um, to really think of things that maybe you hadn't thought of before. Like one example, in fact, and I know this isn't necessarily within the gaming thing, but sometimes it has to do with gamings, but time travel, which obviously is a fictional concept at the moment, but in so many instances, I've sort of thought And I do think it's interesting that pretty much every time we try to change something that seems bad, it becomes worse. And for all we know, things like that could happen, if, because often, one of the biggest questions within theology is the problem of evil. Like, why did this get allowed to happen? And, I feel like, in many cases, and there are video games based off of shows who do this, but it's sort of like, well, we don't know all the factors. We almost never do. In fact, I've never had a single time travel story where everything turned out well because of it. There's always unintended consequences when you wrap something, and it doesn't like prove that necessarily God has a reason, but it does severely throw the idea that if God just did things this way, that it would turn out better.
Usually, if you ask people what is the best RPG of all time, many people will put number one, if not number one, probably at least top five. They'll say Chrono Trigger, back in the
Mm,
16-bit. And it is a story about time travel, and it does have a good ending. But yeah, Chrono Trigger is super popular. And you were talking about the effect of the industry. A lot of Christians say we need to have a reach in Hollywood because Hollywood is reaching our generation so much. The gaming industry brings in about 3 times what Hollywood does easily. If you want to reach the
mm.
culture, go with the gaming industry, not Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah, no, that I didn't actually. Wow, I didn't actually know that it was 3 times as much as Hollywood. Wow,
Yeah,
that's incredible.
yep.
Um,
Mhm.
wow, yeah, but hey, no, that's definitely. I mean, amen, brother. Like that's awesome. So,
Mhm.
but it's really great, and honestly, it just, again, we have to emphasize, you said non-Christians were helping get the word out. I mean, that I've never heard of a single instance where
Yep.
that's happened at any point. I mean, it's
Yep.
but yeah, no, that's amazing. So out of curiosity, so it's a long way away. I know that, but is there, are there any other sources that you're currently using to develop your ideas that maybe you'd recommend to people uh, that you haven't mentioned yet? Like maybe like with regards to what the premise of video games and Christianity is.
Well, I recently read an excellent book by Daniel Kaufman, I think it is, called The Gamer's Journey. And he's got a very enjoyable group on Discord. You can join. James Paul G has a lot of interesting books on the topic. I'm looking over here at some of the things I've got here. The Pop Culture and Philosophy series. Like I see right here, The Legend of Zelda and Philosophy.
Hmm.
I've covered books on questions of video game violence and does it lead to real world violence? Answer, not really. Not only that, I'm going over here to get another resource I've got right here that I ordered from the library. See if this is it. Um, Therapeutically applied role playing games because now
Hmm.
more and more people are realizing games can be used for therapy and specifically role playing games
Oh.
as well. I think it's Marshall McLuhan is another name that we're considering. Not that he wrote so much about games, but he wrote a lot about communication and language. So yeah, there's several books. Games and God by Kevin Shute is another good one because Life is a Game as well. That was another one.
Hmm.
And There's some website, I think it's the Video Game Library, where you can look up books on so many topics here. I mean, some of them are strategy guides, yes, but a lot of them are also philosophy, religion, so many things connected to video games. Now, are video games used to sell non-Christian worldviews and everything else? Yes, of course they are. Just like books, just like movies, just like TV shows. The medium is out there now. Christians can either ignore it, which we've been very good at doing,
Yeah,
or we can actively engage with it and take it on. And I say, let's engage with it because God is the God of everything. I mean,
yes,
Tolkien said God is the God of elves. Yes, and he's also the God of RPGs and video and Mario and Link. Heck, you could even make a case based on Japanese material there that Link is from the Legend of Zelda is actually a Christian. There's an
really.
image of a Link to the Past from a Japanese guide with Link kneeling before a crucifix.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Hmm.
In the original Legend of Zelda, the magic book was supposed to be called a Bible,
Oh,
but Nintendo didn't want religious representation in their games,
right.
so they changed it. And if you look at the Book of Medora in Link to the Past, when is supposed to make a wish, it looks to me more like he's praying instead of
Hmm.
making a wish. And what's that you see on his shield, even in the original Legend of Zelda? Oh, yes, a cross.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, but honestly, yeah, and it really is interesting. And in fact, the how the characters were made is it can sometimes be a story in and of itself. Um, in many cases,
Yeah,
there's creative processes, obviously, and that go into that. But also to drive home your other point about we can either ignore it or embrace it or it, video games aren't going anywhere. Like whether we like
no.
it or not, whether so at the very least, even if somebody may not want, like I get that pastor, it may not be you who necessarily goes out and plays the games with people, but there should be people doing it, and it should be encouraged. Even it may not be your calling
Yeah,
directly, but it's helpful and it's useful. Uh, Simple as
yeah.
that.
You don't have to enjoy games yourself, but you should understand people do enjoy them and why. I view sports the same way. I don't really enjoy sports for the most part, but I know a lot of people really do. And, people would say it'd be absolutely ridiculous to refer to video games in a church service, but I don't know how many times I've been to a church service and some talk is made about sports in the church service. It happens
Yeah,
constantly. I live here in New Orleans and I hear about the saints. And I don't mean Christian saints regularly in church.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely, and I mean there are church football nights, Super Bowl nights, and
Yep.
all the time. Like nobody bats an eye about
Have a
that,
game night then.
and again, I'm not saying they should. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and honestly, if there is any new mediums that come out in the future, we should embrace them as well. If I mean, as long as unless they violate some explicit biblical principle, then it's fair game, honestly. And
Yep. Yep.
uh, but yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's this has been really fascinating in so many different ways, and and honestly, I'm fired up because I want to I want to tell my pastor, because I actually kind of work with two churches at the moment, so I'm going to be relaying this message to both of them. So, but it
Mm-hmm.
definitely is something that I'm almost excited to get involved in, and or at least to support other people getting involved in it, because it's just fun, in many ways,
Yeah.
and like you said, and like we said, it doesn't have to be direct in that way. It can just be uh, simply genuinely being friends without being attached to like any outcome with this person necessarily, and you know uh,
Mm-hmm.
but it can very much depend on context and individual to individual. But yeah, no, I mean gaming nights for the churches. And are there any other things of that nature, or anything else that you'd like to just tell pastors, if you had if you could get them in the room or something?
And say, I'd also say, pastors, you also, when you're giving your sermons, don't beat your heads over people with things. You have to spell things out explicitly. Let them draw their own conclusions and tell the story of the gospel. Don't jump straight to application. Application is usually the worst part of any sermon. Tell the story of the gospel. Let it be its own draw to people. If you spell out what you think it means to people, oftentimes you're treating them like they're idiots. I know that's not the goal, but that's usually what happens. I mean, understand what's going on in these worlds and have discussions about them. Have a game night and you can discuss the games as well if you want to. Or you may just say, let's have fellowship and leave it at that. It's your choice. But this is a world that you're you have gamers in your audience, and thanks to smartphones, pretty much everyone is a gamer now.
Yeah.
And your children are growing up playing games. You can either ignore it or you can interact with it and use it to reach them. I favor the latter.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. But yeah, I mean, those are all the questions, honestly, that I had. But again, Nick, it's been so great, and it's always been a pleasure. And hey, I look forward to and when you I know it's a long way off, but when the time comes, I wouldn't mind reading it and reading anything that you have to say on this topic with regards to dissertation or anything like that. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
I'd also like to let people know, if you're interested in me and my work, and my Patreon is patreon.com/deep. What happened?
No, no, sorry. It was briefly cutting out, but I know I got most of the links, and I'll have those links definitely put into the YouTube description. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's. In fact, I think I have them in our previous interview, so I'll copy and paste them into there. But
yeah. But
but yeah, no,
Patreon on
you
Deeper Waters, you can find regular apologetics content I'm producing. But if you want to see the gaming material I'm producing, you go to the Substack Gaming Theologian.
perfect, absolutely. And hey, honestly, you've given us a lot to think about, and but yeah, no, thanks again. It's always been a pleasure, and you can check out Nick's material, and of course, you can always give this a thumbs up on my channel, and God bless everyone, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.